Welcome to Podcast Movement 2023.
Hello, everyone. I'm thrilled to welcome you all on our next-gen podcasting track, a new PodMove track that Ausha has created for this year. In this masterclass, we're going to delve into one of my favorite subjects, love. But not just any kind of love. We will talk about the love between a brand and its consumers, and how podcasting can serve as a conduit for this love. In the world of marketing, love is cultivated through engagement, and engagement is created through brand communication, where a brand connects with its audience. And what's the best format for engaging with your audience in an intimate way, whispering in their ears? Of course, it's podcasting. To illustrate this, my team and I have selected 5 brands from the more than 11,000 podcasts that we support. These brands have created their own podcast with strategies that we found particularly inspiring. But before we dive in, let me introduce myself. I'm Jennifer, and I'm French, which is why I'm so romantic. And you don't know the worst part. I hail straight from the city of love, Paris. Such a cliche, I know. I flew in last Saturday to be here with you today, guys, and it's my first time in Denver. I must say that it's such a charming city. I serve as a Chief Marketing Officer at Ausha, but before this, I spent 7 years at L'Oréal in the International Marketing Department within the cosmetic industry. It was a company where I significantly developed my branding expertise by launching new international brands. However, in 2019, I decided to follow my passion and created my own media platform focused on food and chefs. Naturally, this venture included a podcast which I hosted myself. It was through this podcasting journey that I discovered Ausha, initially as a user, and later joined the executive team as a CMO. But wait a minute, do you guys know what Ausha is? For those unfamiliar with us, Ausha is the all-in-one platform that provides a comprehensive suite of tools to simplify the process of podcasting. We cover everything from hosting and distribution to analytics and marketing. But what sets us apart from other hosting platforms are our advanced podcast marketing tools. But today, I'd like to introduce you Ausha Pro, our branch dedicated to branded podcasts. With Ausha Pro, we offer exclusive features and services to help you customize your podcast assets further to align with your brand identity. We handle all the distribution and publication for you, taking off this task off your plate. We also can provide biannual statistical reports and offer trainings on our tool. Additionally, we understand that every corporation has unique technical requirements. That's why we are ready to implement custom technical solutions to meet your specific needs. With Ausha Pro, we are here to support your brand's podcasting journey every step of the way. All right. Now that you know a little bit about me and my company, let's turn the tables, and I'd love to learn more about you. I'm going to ask a few quick questions, and if your answer is yes, please raise your hand. So let's start with an easy one. Who's happy to be here with me this morning? Thank you so much. Great. I'm thrilled to be here with you too. And you know, last night I had a nightmare that when I asked that question, like no one will raise his hand. So thank you so much for not making this nightmare come true. So now, who among you already have a podcast? Ah, okay. Good to know. And for those who didn't raise their hands, who is planning to launch a podcast in a few coming months? Okay, fantastic. It's great to see such a mix of experiences and plans in the room. Thank you for sharing. So, let's go back to our main topic, love brands. But before we dive in, let's make sure that we are all aligned on the same page. What exactly is a love brand? And especially, why should we care? A love brand is a brand that has built such a strong emotional connection with its consumer that they become loyal advocates. And here's a quick tip from one marketer to another. We often get challenged by bosses or CFOs about the value of investing in brand capital, especially when they can't see a direct return on investment, right? I think I see some people shaking heads. And my simple response to them is this. With equal products but cheaper competitors, consumers will still choose you if they love your brand. This directly impacts your conversion rates and the value of your offer, therefore increasing your revenue. This is the power of brand engagement, and it's worth every penny. And let me tell you, this response has always worked well for me. For those marketers who haven't yet launched their project, or for those who need ammunition to defend their project internally or towards clients, here are some data points to underscore why the medium of podcasting is particularly compelling for a brand today. First, are you aware of how immense is the reach of podcast medium? Let's dive into some impressive statistics from the Infinity Dial 2023 of Edison Research from our friend Gabriel here. And this year, 183 million Americans have tuned into podcasts. That's 1 in 2 Americans. It's huge. And to put that into perspective, that's double the active user count of Netflix in the US. It's also twice the users base of X, previously Twitter, and it even outnumbers TikTok's user base. So as you can see, podcasting is far from being a niche medium, and it has a broad and diverse audience, making it a powerful tool for brands to connect with their consumers. And the podcast doesn't just have power in volume, but also in quality. It's a medium that's highly influential. According to a recent study from Magna and Vox Media, based on 2,000 respondents, 75% are more influenced by podcasters than influencers on social media or mainstream celebrities. So you guys can be more influential than Ryan Reynolds. No, he's a really good one, I love him. Given all these factors, it's no surprise that more and more brands are flocking to this medium. And at Ausha, we've seen the number of brand podcasts triple in just 1 year. Speaking of our brand podcast, among the many we support, so as I mentioned, we selected 5 case studies to show you different brand podcast strategies that we are going to break down together. Before we start, I just want to share a little side note. You might notice a certain je ne sais quoi about our selection, with quite a few French luxury brands making the cut for their international podcast. I promise it's not just my French bias showing, well, a little bit, but because these cases are genuinely intriguing and insightful. Now that said, let's dive into our first podcast success story with Dior. Are you guys familiar with Dior? The French luxury brand is a titan in the fashion industry, renowned for its trend-setting designs and timeless elegance. Let's dive into their podcast strategy. Dior has an impressive portfolio of 6 international podcasts. They showed that they fully understood how the power of storytelling and consumer connection are especially crucial for a luxury brand. One standout podcast is Dior Tales. This show is a creative masterpiece where the artistic director of Baby Dior, the Dior's line for children, personally narrates the story of Christian Dior, the brand's founder. The storytelling format is designed to captivate children, but it's also a smart way to engage parents. Both demographics enjoy high-quality content and a delightful audio experience, all while connecting with the Dior brand story. Let's take a moment to listen to a short clip.
Welcome to the Dior land of fairy tales. My name is Cordelia de Castellan, and I'm the creative director of Baby Dior. Today, I'm going to tell you a story I wrote specially for you, The Kingdom of Christian Dior. One very cold day in January, a little boy was born in the middle of the natural beauty of a large Norman forest. His sweet mother, Madeleine, wrapped him in a violet blanket, like those found in the French woods. She named him Christian.
Nice, isn't it? Now let's break down to the key success factors of Dior Tales. The first factor I see is their targeting strategy, as I mentioned. The content is targeted towards children, but parents will be the one broadcasting it for them, and most of the time they will be listening with them. By creating content that can be enjoyed both by their children, Dior is indirectly reaching out to their real target consumers, at least the one who can purchase. The second point I see is how innovative is the content. Dior Tales is a great example of innovative content marketing. By venturing into the podcast space, Dior is not only staying ahead of the curve, but also engaging with their audience in a new and exciting way. And the last key success factor I saw is their unique storytelling. The podcast stands out due to its unique approach to storytelling. It's not just about the brand or its products, but it delves into the history and legacy of Christian Dior. The involvement of the artistic director of Baby Dior adds authenticity and credibility to the podcast. This creates a deeper connection with the audience. Another strategic decision they made was to launch this podcast during the Christmas season. The timing was perfect for this type of content. You wouldn't believe the buzz it created among media outlets. So now let's shift gears and talk about Service Titan. This is a software company that provides a comprehensive suite of business management tools for various types of contractors. These are folks who are often so busy providing their services that managing the business side of things can be overwhelming. Service Titan steps into to offer much needed support. And one of the ways Service Titan does this is through their podcast, Toolbox for the Trades. This podcast is a goldmine of practical, actionable tips from industry experts. It covers a wide range of topics, from finance and marketing to sales and customer service, all in a dynamic and digestible format. And let's not forget, this audience doesn't have time to waste. But here's the kicker. The podcast is just one piece of a much larger content strategy. Service Titan has created an entire online platform of resources, also called the Toolbox. This platform is packed with webinars, articles, and free tools, all designed to help home service professionals succeed in their businesses. Each podcast episode links to a wealth of additional resources, creating an impressive internal network. This allowed Service Titan to create the ultimate lead magnet, with each channel feeding into and supporting the others. Let's listen to a snippet of the podcast.
Overspending on advertising is the tax you pay for being unremarkable. And that's what a lot of companies do, is right? They've got brands that aren't great, so they just keep banging more money into it.
You're listening to Toolbox for the Trades, brought to you by Service Titan, a podcast for top service professionals where we interview leaders for their best tips and tricks of the trades. Learn how industry trailblazers stay ahead of the competition and how you too can be at the forefront of an industry. Let's jump in.
So now you know the drill. Let's analyze the three main cases X factor. The first one is that the content is very practical and actionable right away. The podcast provides real and usable tips that listeners can implement in their businesses right away. This is vital for an audience that doesn't have the luxury of time to wade through unnecessary details. The second point I see is the empowering of the customers. The podcast and their larger toolbox platform are not just about providing resources, they're about empowering Service Titans customers to become more proficient in their business management. This, in turn, makes them more likely to become power users of Service Titans tools, creating a win-win situation for both parties. And the last point is the cross-promotion among channels. Each podcast episode links to the other resources on the Toolbox platform, creating a network of content that drives traffic and engagement across channels. These interrelations boost the visibility and reach of each resource, making the whole greater than the sum of its parts. Next up, we have a brand that's a reference in the world of watchmaking, Hublot. Known for their innovative designs and fusion on unconventional materials, Hublot has made a name for itself on the high-end watchmaking industry. Hublot has a strong association with sports, particularly soccer, and has partnered with numerous soccer clubs and events, reinforcing their brand identity within the sports world. Now let's talk about their podcast, Fusion. This podcast was launched in conjunction with the UEFA 2020 events, for which Hublot created a special edition connected watch. To celebrate this, they created a 12-episode podcast, each episode lasting 12 minutes, a nod to the 12 hours on the watch face, and each episode explores one of the 12 values that Hublot stands for. Featuring high-profile guests from the international soccer scene like Mbappé, Pelé, and Mourinho. Let's listen to a brief extract.
Hello, today you join me on the Hublot Fusion Podcast Football 2021 edition with the greatest legend in world football. He is the icon of the Brazilian national team. He is the only player on the planet to have won 3 World Cups. Considered to be the best player in the history of football, his name is, to this day, synonymous with talent and excellence. With more than 1,300 goals during his career, he made football an art. I'm Anne-Laure Bonnet, and I welcome Pelé. So Pelé, today we're going to talk about love. Love as a universal value. Your love for football, for life, the love you gave to the fans throughout football.
It seems that I'm not the only one who likes to talk about love, right? Here are the key success factors we have identified for Fusion. So, first, it's a podcast event tied in. The podcast was cleverly tied to the UEFA 2020 event, creating a buzz around both the events and the special edition watch. This strategic timing helped to maximize the podcast's reach and impact. Second point is how clever is the format. The 12 episodes in 12-minute format is a smart way to tie the podcast with the brand's identity. It's a subtle way, yet effective, to reinforce the brand's image and make the podcast a memorable part of Hublot's brand narrative. And the last point is that they associate the podcast with an exclusive NFT. Hublot cleverly integrated the podcast into their product launch of the connected watch, but the first 200 purchasers of the connected watch became part of the Hublotista community and were given an exclusive NFT, which gave access to an exclusive snippets from the podcast episodes. This created an additional layer of exclusivity and engagement. These factors combined make Fusion a compelling brand podcast that successfully extends Hublot's brand narrative into the audio space. Next, we have another brand that's a reference in the world of fashion, Saint Laurent. Smoking is a podcast of intimate interviews with actors from the world of cinema who are often seen but not heard. Saint Laurent has invited their friends, the faces of the brand, into a smoky room a dark and intimate setting that enhances the introspective and personal nature of the podcast. The objective is to offer them a microphone without frills or censorship and allow them to open up honestly to the world. This allowed the brand to offer exclusive content about these celebrities, hearing things about them that we've never heard before because no one had given them the opportunity. Each episode features a segment where the guest is confronted with their own reflection in a space, in a room, filled with mirrors everywhere. The host, Pascal Clark, then asks them a simple question: what do you see? And the response offers a unique insight into the guest's perception of themselves. It's surprising how we can discover the vulnerability of actors whose job relies mostly on appearance sometimes. Let's listen to the mirror exercise with the great actress Catherine Deneuve.
I wanted to show you a room, a secret room here. If you'd like to come with me, I'll just show you.
I'll follow you.
Here, I'll let you open it.
Quelle horreur!
What a horror.
Cette lumière,
All this
ces
light,
miroirs.
all these mirrors.
At one point, you were described as the most beautiful woman in the world.
Ça a coûté, ça s'est dit
Look,
plusieurs
it's been
fois
said
pour
many
beaucoup de-
times in many
pour beaucoup de
cases for
personnes.
many others.
Not that many.
C'est vrai que ça arrive, je m'en souviens très bien.
It's
mais c'est
true
vrai
that
qu'après,
I
ça
remember
nous
it very
fait
well.
une situation, il faut quand
But
même
it's also
répondre
true
à
that it
cette,
creates a situation
à
where
la
you have
hauteur
to
de cette-
live up to this ideal.
Oui, bah oui,
Well,
donc des choses
yes,
qui
certain
nous attendent, et c'est
expectations.
certain que ça a été quand même
It was
sûrement
obviously a more
difficile.
difficult time for me.
Pressure?
Oui, physiquement, d'être ce qu'on attend.
Yes,
ce qu'on attend
physically,
de
to
vous,
be
bien
what's
sûr.
expected of you.
Mais en même temps, ça
Yes, of
d'un
course.
autre côté, ça vous
But at the
oblige
same time,
aussi
in
à
other
vous
ways,
soutenir alors qu'on pourrait
it
très
also
bien
forces you to look after yourself, whereas you could very well let yourself go in life when you're not working, when you're not shooting.
So the key success factor of Saint Laurent's podcast strategy, the first thing is to choose high-profile guests. The inclusion of high-profile guests who are friends and faces of the brand lends prestige and draws listeners due to their celebrity status. These aren't just any guests. These are major figures from the world of the French auteur cinema. The second point is the intimate settings. This podcast's unique selling point is its ability to foster an intimate environment that encourages deeply personal reflection from the guest. This is achieved through the mirror segment in each episode, an intimate exercise that addresses the guest in a deep introspection, as you heard. Also, the smoking room setting of the interview that further enhances this intimate atmosphere. And additionally, the podcast format itself, requiring much less production crew than a film interview. And don't forget, but that contributes significantly to maintaining its intimate environment. And last thing is the provocative content. In a sense that Saint Laurent loves to do things or be in the unexpected. This is their brand signature. And here in the content, instead of glorifying movie stars, they take the opposite approach and gives an expected image of these actors for an unexpected experience. A simple, subdued, classy, but powerful moment in perfect alignment with the brand. For a final example, we are going to look at a completely different type of brand, public entities, and more specifically, the reputation of a city. We're going to talk about the podcast Small Towns, Healthy Places, produced by Vermont Healthy Communities. Vermont Healthy Communities is an initiative aimed at improving the health and well-being of Vermont residents by fostering healthier communities. Their podcast, Small Towns, Healthy Places, is a great example of how a public entity can use podcasting to achieve its goal. In this podcast, the two hosts explore the challenges and opportunities of life in Vermont small towns. Each episode focuses on a specific aspect of life in these communities, such as access to outdoor recreational spaces, promoting active modes of transportation like walking and biking, and revitalizing towns that need a little boost. What's particularly interesting about this podcast is that it caters to both professionals interested in public space management and local residents. It gives a voice to the locals and highlight the community's efforts to create and maintain towns that are great places to live. This is a smart strategy in a world where remote work is becoming more common and many professionals are choosing to move to rural areas. Let's listen to a snippet from the episode about the access to outdoor spaces.
Every time we ask people what they love about Vermont, there's one thing they almost always tell us. They love getting into nature and enjoying outdoor activities of all kinds.
I'm a skier and a mountain biker, so Vermont is a great place to do those things and enjoy the natural world.
I love all of the outdoor beauty and activities that Vermont offers.
Access to abundant recreation, the fresh air, the nature.
I love the outside access to the lake, to the mountains.
I like the lake, I like the mountains.
Whether it's the mountains or the lake or your neighbor's field.
So the key success factors we identified in the strategy is first, as I mentioned, the territory promotion. By showcasing efforts to improve the quality of life in Vermont small towns, the podcast can attract new residents, particularly those who are able to work remotely. And podcast as an open, an open environment and with in the digital format accessible to everyone, everywhere in the US, it's a smart choice of a medium. The second point is the community engagement. The podcast not only highlights the local community's engagement, but also give a voice to locals themselves, as you heard. Who better to act as ambassadors for their towns than the residents themselves? And last thing is how educational and inspirational content it is. The podcast provides practical advice and inspiration for other small towns looking to improve their own communities. It serves as a blueprint for community development, showing that's possible when residents, local leaders, and public entities work together towards a common goal. Wow, how time flies. We're nearing the end of this track. I hope that the 5 cases we've selected from the many brand podcasts we support have sparked some inspiration for you. Whether you already have a brand podcast or just considering the idea, remember that there are a world of possibilities out there. Each brand has a unique story to tell, and the podcast can be a powerful way to share that story with the world. We'd love to help you to amplify your brand's voices, as we already do with many of our professional podcasters. Today, we serve over 11,000 satisfied podcasters, as reflected in our Capterra rating, and we'll be honored to welcome you among our community. For that, do not hesitate to pass by our booth in PodMove or send an email to my team. Thank you so much for your time and energy today. And if you have some question, I think we have less than 2 minutes left, if the AV team is okay, yeah? If you have a question, just raise your hand and Jack will provide you a microphone. Thank you. You guys are so quiet. Then if that's okay, thank you everyone and see you around.